Hello, Muslim friends of the world. Picture this: a mathematics professor at a top-tier university in the United States, known for his rationality, logic, and sharp critical thinking, suddenly stands in a mosque on a Friday afternoon. He raises his hands, his voice trembling as he recites the Shahada, the Islamic declaration of faith. Behind him, dozens of students and fellow professors watch in stunned silence, some frozen, others moved to tears. This isn't a one-off story. It's not an anomaly. Over the past decade, a quiet but significant wave has begun to ripple through the ivy-covered walls of American academia. Top-tier scholars, scientists, and intellectuals are converting to Islam. And these aren't just any people. There's Dr. Jeffrey Lang, a former militant atheist and now a mathematics professor. Dr. Gerald Dirks, a Harvard graduate and former Protestant minister. Dr. Lawrence Brown, a former military physician turned author. Dr. Umar Farouk Abdullah, a brilliant thinker in philosophy and religious history. And Dr. Hamza Yusuf, now one of the most respected Muslim intellectuals in the Western world. So what's happening? Why are these rational minds, trained to think critically, argue rigorously, and question everything, finding meaning in Islam, a religion so often misunderstood and misrepresented in the West? In the documentary titled The Rational Path, American Intellectuals Discover Islam, the camera takes us on a journey rarely told. These aren't your typical conversion stories. These are the stories of thinkers, people who embraced Islam not out of tradition, not out of emotional crisis, but through a long, intense, intellectual search for truth. "Islam didn't force me to believe," said Dr. Lang in one interview. "Islam challenged me to think." Those aren't just words. They summarize a deeply personal journey, marked by doubt, resistance, even inner turmoil, before finally arriving at a conviction that welcomed reason rather than suppressing it. Meanwhile, across the American academic landscape, campuses once dominated by skeptical, liberal, and secular cultures are starting to take notice. Islamic studies seminars are no longer empty. Students line up to speak with professors who have suddenly changed course. Some universities have even hosted open forums to explore the intersection of science, philosophy, and spirituality. The media took notice too. First confused, then curious, then intrigued. Who are these people? Why are they embracing Islam in a world increasingly suspicious of it? The answer isn't simple, but one thing is clear. This is no coincidence.
No one can truly predict where the path of spiritual searching will lead. For some, the journey ends where they were born. But for others, like the individuals in this story, it becomes a long and winding road that passes through philosophical debates, university lecture halls, hospital corridors, and even church altars, before ultimately arriving in a mosque. Take Dr. Gerald Dirks, for example. Raised in a devout Christian environment, he attended Harvard Divinity School, became a minister, and immersed himself deeply in theology. On the surface, his life appeared to follow a clear path, a religious figure with one of the most prestigious academic backgrounds in America. But beneath that polished surface, troubling questions began to stir. The more I studied religious history, the more I felt something wasn't adding up. I began to notice gaps between doctrine and historical fact, and I couldn't ignore those gaps. When he began reading about Islam, not through the media but from its original sources, he didn't find confusion. He found consistency. A pure monotheism, a coherent historical narrative, a practical and ethical way of life. He didn't feel like he was abandoning his faith. He felt like he was completing it. Meanwhile, in another part of the country, a military doctor named Dr. Lawrence Brown lived far from any form of religion. An atheist, he believed science was the only real truth. But life has a strange way of knocking on the human heart. When his newborn daughter was critically ill with no hope of survival, Dr. Brown, who had never prayed before, cried out to the sky for the first time, "If there's a God, "Save my child." His daughter survived. Some might call it a coincidence, but for Dr. Brown, it was the beginning of a serious search. He read the Bible, the Gospels, Buddhist teachings, even Hindu texts, but none satisfied his intellectual thirst. Until he opened the Quran. "I wasn't searching for God in Islam, but Islam found me through a logic I couldn't deny," he said. Dr. Jeffrey Lang also had a deeply moving journey. A staunch atheist in his youth, his life was marked by spiritual rebellion. "I hated religion," he said bluntly. But when a quiet Muslim student gave him a Quran, something began to shift. He read it skeptically, ready to challenge every verse, but instead, he found a direct dialogue between the Quran and his mind. "Do you not think? Do you not reflect?" Those verses felt like they were speaking directly to him. Lang admitted he often wept late at night while reading the Quran, not because he was seeking God, but because he felt he had been found by him.
Then there's Dr. Hamza Yusuf. Raised in California, in a Christian household, his spiritual awakening came through culture. He saw the spiritual emptiness at the heart of modern materialism. After falling seriously ill as a teenager, he began to question life's meaning, death, and destiny. Eventually, he found the spiritual depth he had been seeking in Islam, a faith that addressed not only the human relationship with God, but also with fellow human beings and the natural world. They never met in the same place or time, but their paths intersected at one crucial point, an honest, intellectual search for truth. They read, they questioned, they challenged, they doubted, but they never stopped. And in the end, they found Islam, not as a rigid dogma, but as a way of life that made sense, touched the heart, and satisfied the mind. This was no instant conversion. There were tears, inner battles, even social pressure, but they chose not to pretend, not to themselves, and not to the truth they had found. Many in the West grow up believing that faith and logic are irreconcilable opposites. But for the intellectuals who embraced Islam, the discovery was quite the opposite. Islam does not reject reason, it celebrates it. Dr. Jeffrey Lang often said that while reading the Quran, he felt like he was being engaged in a conversation, not dictated to. Questions like, "Do you not think?" and "Will you not reflect?" were not rhetorical, they were invitations. To him, they were proof that this religion did not fear reason, it embraced it. Islam isn't about blind belief. It offers a rational and structured framework of ethics, law, and cosmology. These scholars saw in Islam a bridge between faith and scientific inquiry, something they had rarely encountered elsewhere. It wasn't a rejection of logic. It was logic, followed to its furthest point, and there they found God. These thinkers prove that faith is not the enemy of knowledge, it can be its ally. Dr. Umar Farooq Abdullah often noted that in Islamic history, great scholars like Ibn Sina, Al-Farabi, and Al-Ghazali never divorced philosophy, science, and spirituality. They merged them. Dr. Hamza Yusuf shared a similar view. To him, Islam offers a complete framework, a way to think, feel, and act coherently. Faith in Islam isn't an escape from reality. It's a way to grasp it more completely. With strong academic backgrounds, they didn't feel like they were turning away from logic. In fact, they felt they were finally following it all the way, and it led them to something greater. The public was shocked. Colleagues were confused. Media asked questions. But for these academics, the decision to embrace Islam was not about timing. It was about truth that could no longer be ignored. In a world increasingly chaotic, facing moral crisis, existential voids, and fractured identities, Islam came to them as a comprehensive answer, intellectually logical, spiritually deep, and practical in everyday life. The choice was not without cost. They faced prejudice, social pressure, and even the loss of personal relationships. But one conviction held them steady. Truth doesn't need to be popular to be accepted. To them, Islam wasn't the end of a journey.
It was the beginning of a more conscious, honest, and meaningful life.